Welcome everyone to the May meeting of Lower Makefield Farmland Preservation, Inc. I'm Michael Blank. I'm the president of Lower Makefield Farmland Preservation Board of Directors, and joining me on the call, we'll just go around. Start with Dennis.
Dennis Stedman. We don't need it to go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Dan.
Dan Bankowski, treasurer.
And George.
George Hines.
That we have one other member who will join us in progress, Sean Carney. So with that, I'll ask Dennis to get us on our first topic, which is approval of our April 19th meeting minutes.
Right. Those meeting minutes have been reviewed by by George. I was not present at the April 19th meeting, and then circulated and reviewed by the full board. I have not heard of any edits or modifications to what was circulated. So if that's still the case, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
I think, George, there were some edits.
There were, I believe you had some edits, Mike.
Some minor ones.
So I just passed those on to Janelle as you wrote them, and I'm assuming she incorporated them appropriately.
There wasn't anything major, Dennis.
Okay. So they were edits on top of the last thing that we saw that was circulated a week or so ago. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And they were minor. They were like different spots. And then Dan had one recommended change, which was just to talk about when we get to the accounting firm, we needed to just vote on that officially, even though we have every intent to use the same person as we did last year.
Okay. George, do you feel that it's appropriate to make a motion to approve the minutes as circulated and amended per those emails?
I do.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Minutes are
Thank you,
approved.
Dennis
Back to you,
and
Mike.
George. Treasurer's report, Dan.
Yep. So a couple expenses that we had here during the month of May. We paid $50 to LMT. We'll touch on this, I think, a little bit later too, but this is with respect to Charland Farms and their Community Day entrance fee. We paid $1,175 to Corcoran Landscaping. This was for the first invoice for the buffer work that they're doing now this summer. And then we sent Dr. Sven Sternad, Dennis, if I'm pronouncing his name right. We sent him a check for $464.17. Just a reminder, everybody, he is the entomologist that has a very small lease with us to keep some beehives on our property. And this was a reimbursement for him as he was expanding the hives. And we told him that we would pay for those bees. And that's it.
Okay.
We talked about asset allocation not too long ago. We'll leave that out there until another 4 months or 5 months from now. But if anyone has any other questions, let me know.
Questions, comments for Dan? Okay, hearing none, we'll move right on. Thank you, Dan. All right, the next topic is for George. There was some buffer that needed cleaning up on Stackhouse behind Mr. Hirschman's house at 1554 Brookfield Road.
Right. Going back into last month, I guess maybe it was early May, part of it. Sean and I did go over and do a little clean out ourselves right along the fence line. And then the next day, or that same day, we actually met with Matt Corcoran, and they were supposed to, as they were doing their buffer work on Stackhouse, do a little bit of additional clean out along that fence line. I have not walked back there to check it out, but I was gonna touch bases tonight, I guess, or ask Sean when he gets here what the progress is of all the buffer clean out in general and which parcels of land have been, the buffers have been cleared out so far.
Okay, I'll just make a note of that. So if you wouldn't forget that, that would be good at the end. Hopefully Sean will be here and you can follow up with him then. All right. Any questions, comments on that? No. Okay, so the next thing is an update on the easement request from Worthington and Associates over on Heather Ridge. Dan?
Yeah, so this is 1491 Heather Ridge Drive. Worthington and Shagan Custom Builders are the ones that bought that property. They had sent an initial exploratory request conversation to us about the potential of putting an easement through our field that's, call it, in front of the property that they bought to connect to the rest of the Heather Ridge neighborhood for water and sewer. We had our initial feedback back to them was, you don't need to do a request. You don't need an easement to take this across our field. You should take this down the sidewalk and then up your driveway. They apparently were able to do this with respect to the gas line that they were running, but not able to make this work for water and sewer. They sent a note back to us with some comments and a high-level survey map. We sent this over to the township, to the township solicitor, and also Jim Majewski. They're going to speak about it a little bit so that they can be well-versed on kind of that specific area, and then regroup back with us so that they can get us up to speed so that we can have a good, real conversation with Worthington and Shagan Custom Builders about the potential here. And so that we're up to speed on really what our options are.
Questions or comments for Dan on that?
Dan, do you have any sense of when the township might get back to us with that input as one first part, and the second part, does Worthington and Sagan, is there any kind of deadline here? I mean, have they said anything about a timeline? Do they need this in a month, in 3 months, by winter? Just any information along those lines on timing?
Sure. Yeah. So the David Truelove said that he was connecting with Jim and come back to us. That was 13 days ago, but that he was, I know, out for a period of time. He sent that over to me when he was out of the office for a week or so. I have not heard Chance Worthington did not give me any other kind of specific timeline that he is working off of. No.
So I guess the question I have, Dan, is from what you explained, if they were able to use the other approach and not need an easement for the gas line, but it sounds like they still may need one for the sewer and water, does that mean that going down the sidewalk and up the driveway is just not feasible at all for water and sewer?
So from my understanding, and of course, I would prefer that it's verified, and that's part of what we're doing, right? To kind of confirm with the township that this makes sense. But I think that potentially, or in theory, there may still be a possibility that they could, two different ways. One, they rip up the entire driveway the whole way going down, and they do it that way. Or two, they take down a whole row of trees that they have on their property. And so in either one of those situations, then they may opt to not do anything then in those situations.
They even, I guess, raised the possibility of going back to square one and doing it the old way. Well, and not sump pump, but
right. If this all becomes unfeasible for them because we're putting up too much of a roadblock, then they're likely just not to do, they're going to leave it at well and septic.
Septic.
I mean, I can understand, it doesn't seem reasonable to take down a whole row of mature trees to adhere to their property line. I don't think that's reasonable. Whether they can go up the driveway, as you say, it sounds like the two likely potentials are either they dig up their driveway and avoid the trees, or they ask us for the easement directly across the field. That's
right.
Those are
And
kind of the two.
They may have, yeah, they may have already determined that even doing the driveway may not even work because it may be too close to something else.
Right.
But I don't have an exact confirmation. That's kind of what where we're at right now, though.
Okay.
Exploring.
Okay.
I will say, as far as timelines and, the urgency, the township has been very cooperative and responsive for us, both Dave and Jim, and engaged in this. So I think they're really kind of helping us out. I don't want to say what side they're on, but they have been a big help in doing this.
Right.
So.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion on that topic, on the easement request? Hearing none, we can move on. And the next one is, there's several issues on Makefield Brook, Dennis, that you've raised in walking that field, and I've listed them here. I assume you have the agenda, see the three topics?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Let's go to that since Dan's not, or I'm sorry, since you're right, that's next.
That's next, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, we had the farm, our annual spring tour, and we had Doug McGowan and Tim and Sam Stewart, as well as board members, and we selected certain properties to visit where there was an issue to be discussed. We did not visit every property because it's just not necessary. I would comment on the spring tour that in the past years, our spring tours, I thought were very focused on erosion issues, water management, soil management, and I have to compliment I think this board and the stewards in working closely together over the last couple of years, and with the Bucks County Soil Conservation Service to report that we really have no major soil erosion and water management issues. That's not to say that there aren't things we need to pay attention to, but the major issues have been addressed. So that was kind of a change from past tours, and it made the tour a little shorter and less impactful, if you will. There is some new grading on the north side of Stackhouse. When the grading was done last year by the soil conservation, it was unfortunate while the big equipment was there, they stopped just short, left a very small area that just needed a minor adjustment. Minor if you have the right equipment, major if you don't have the right equipment. And so it wasn't done perfect. It was done maybe 95%. We reviewed that. Tim Stewart, with some of his farm implements, was going to try to run back and forth over that area and try to shift some soil and try to fix that 5% that wasn't covered. But Sam and Tim are very cognizant of it and aware of it. I also had suggested, in the context of soil erosion, potentially looking at the lower end of the field on Clearview, the east end that goes down towards Taylorsville Road. But as I raised that issue, Tim described it to me perfectly. He obviously had seen the same issue, was very aware of it, knew what he was going to do. He was going to, the way he would modify his planting there and things. So we decided not to go see that because we really just covered it there at Doug's place. Probably the major issue that came out of the farm tour was Farm View 2 parcel off of Dolington Road. As we pulled in, there's a driveway up next to the new community that was just built there in the last year or two. And as we all pulled into that driveway that gives the farmer access, it was kind of comical. Everyone got out of their cars and basically said the same thing. Why isn't there a fence here? There's no fence between our farmland property and these residential neighbors of ours. And of course, the answer is because a couple of years ago, there were no houses.
neighbors.
There was no need
No
for a
neighbors.
fence.
Right.
It was just bordering some overgrowth wooded area. So it became pretty apparent just looking at where our neighbors are cutting their lawns and the grass lines and things that we should install a fence there. And I propose that as an action item coming out of the spring tour, that we install a fence from scratch along that boundary back to the corner from Dolington Road back to the first corner at minimum. There is an area there, the way the street is curved and the neighborhood was constructed, where our farmland comes very close to the curb. And so for that span, it may pay to just put our fence post and not stretch the wire, just to demarcate the boundary clearly so there's no confusion, but to not interfere with any usage there. I think a fence is important too, because I mean, these are families. There should be a physical barrier to kind of discourage children or anyone from just walking into the field and trespassing. It is an active farm, and that's not to be allowed. So the issue, I think the expenditure will be influenced by how we go about this. It seems we need a survey unless there are good survey lines that we can go by. It doesn't seem like it when we were standing there. I mean, there's some stakes that the new contractor put up, but we don't know the basis of those stakes. There's some trees that look like boundary trees and some old pipes. But if we're going to install a fence, we shouldn't guess. So I think the question for this board is, do we spend the money to conduct a survey of that parcel, establish clear lines, notify the neighbors that we're going to install a fence before we install it, and install a fence? And I think that should be done, not urgently, but it should be done without much delay, because there's no reason to wait.
So let me stop you there and add some perspectives, historical perspective. There were stakes put in the ground. There's some metal stakes, and I sent around some pictures of that field yesterday. They are mostly visible on the Dolington end of that line that you're speaking of. Then there gets into some more dense shrubbery and trees, and it's hard to pick out if those metal stakes are still there. And then as there's one wooden one down near the corner along that line that probably was put in by the developer. Yeah, I agree that something needs to be there to demarcate it. And in fact, I pointed out, and I was going to do that in other business, that the first neighbor nearest Dolington has already put up some pine trees, much like the Heather Ridge situation, planted on our side of the apparent line. So I wonder if we should stop here and just have a discussion of that and
Yeah, I would suggest a discussion. If you can excuse me, I have a tow truck in my driveway. I'm going to disappear for 5 minutes, but I'll be
Okay.
back shortly. But
All right.
don't wait for me.
Okay, well, we can come back to that because Dennis, has brought that to our attention. So let's see. So the next few topics were for Dennis. So while we're waiting, well, George and Dan, any thoughts on what Dennis has just brought up about Farm View 2?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I was on the farm tour, as was Dan, so we were both there. And that day we all agreed from looking at it physically that I think the action plan would be to support a survey of the property line to understand exactly where the line runs so we have good visibility to it. And then the second piece is once we understand what that line is, the property line, to see if anybody is encroached over it or where it lines up against the street further down into the development, is then decide how much of a fence is appropriate to put up. And I'm not sure you have to run the fence the whole line, but as Dennis said, you at least put the stakes or the posts in the ground and you run a fence up to a certain point where it makes sense in other pieces of it. But I think you have to start with a survey to understand the magnitude of what's required. And once we understand the magnitude of what's required, then I think you can come up with an action plan to put it. But inevitably, I think there's going to be some version of a fence that has to run between the farmland and the housing development.
Okay.
As you move up from Dolington up to Susan Circle, that one house that we're talking about, and there's a couple pine trees, then essentially the property line is right against Susan Circle right there. So probably a stretch there that you wouldn't need to do or want to do anything.
Right.
And then, as I was going to bring up later, might as well now, it's bring it up now about the same field. There's missing fence that we were unable to see before the nice cleanup that Corcoran's done in that same field. There's a missing fence behind Sunnyside Lane, and there's one on Dolington too that goes back to the other side of Dolington, and it looks like that fence should be installed there as well. So I think we could have a company come out and look at the whole thing once the survey is done.
Right.
And that, to me, even though we have at least a partial line on the other angle going along behind Sunnyside Lane out towards Dolington, then making a right angle back towards Dolington another direction, we have fence there already. I don't know if we need a survey there, but certainly I'd want to ask the surveyor what they thought too, whether it has to be resurveyed as well.
Well, I got to believe if you've got the surveyor out there when they're doing their thing, it's not going to cost a whole heck of a lot to do it properly at that point. I mean, they're out there, they've got the equipment. Just have them do the whole thing.
Do the whole field.
Yep.
If there's pins, if there's metal pins there that he can locate with his equipment, and we're just doing a small span, that may be sufficient. Usually surveyors, though, if they do anything, they don't want to touch any part without doing the whole thing. But again, if there's a couple pins that he can identify, maybe there's a shortcut. But generally, George, I think you're right that probably do the whole thing.
It may not have been that. I think it was before I joined, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't all that long before I joined the board when we had that property surveyed.
Oh.
So we'll get the same surveyor. I don't imagine it would be too big of a job. And Dennis, I think you're right. I think that there's certainly markings in a lot of places, but 100% of what was there is still there. Maybe not.
I remember going out with you, Dan, certainly after you joined, and we saw some of that blue plastic holy thing that was stretched out along there. It seemed to be
Yeah.
part of the line. I don't know whether there were stakes there at that time, but now there are some stakes. But okay, so that's the first step. Are we in agreement that a surveyor should be engaged to go out and survey that? That sounds like to me the entire field.
In the case of Farm View 2, I would say the entire field.
Yeah.
Because the lines I think are deceiving. I mean, the sense I had, like the one neighbor whose fence we were standing behind was not, I don't believe, running parallel with the line. So if we just kind of went by his fence, it would be deceptive.
Yeah.
And so we really need to get it right. And once we when we go from Dolington down to that corner, we turn the corner. I know we have some neighbors down there with some backyard issues that we've dealt with in the past. I'm not familiar with it. Some of you guys are, but I don't know if we should be considering putting a fence up, as we make that turn or
That's what
not.
Well, that's what I was talking about. The fence
Okay.
is there, a chain link fence is there, but only part way.
So
So
that's
that
the sunny side you were talking
sunny
about.
side, it needs
I'm
to be
sorry.
extended, and then as it makes another right angle and then goes out kind of parallel with Dolington, there's still fence missing too until you get to that first house with the big shrubs, who put up his own fence. So we really do need to look at the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to agree on a survey and then go from there.
All
I
right,
think that we just talked ourselves into a $5,000 job here, because this is significant stretches that do not have fence is going to be a lot of work to remove all of the brush to be able to put in a fence.
Right. Oh, I think we're talking about more than 5K.
And then you're right, because we have a stretch on the Sunnyside Lane side. There's a stretch with a fence and a stretch without a fence.
Right.
The reason we did not put a fence in is because of all of the expense that it would take to remove all of the brush. That was the reason why there's no fence there.
Yeah, right. And now that's been done, for the most part, it's much easier access, although there is some more to be taken out there as well. So, all right.
But if we are going to do something on the backside, again, we should wait until a survey is done until we make a call. But if we do something on the backside there of Farmview 2, on either side of that cul-de-sac on Susan Circle, well, at that point, you got to do it all, I think, then.
Yeah. Well, I'll make a motion, if it's not premature, to have a survey done of Farm View 2 in its entirety, and get a surveyor out to see whether they agree that the whole thing should be surveyed, which they probably will.
Yeah, I would second that motion. It could be a resurvey where they find they have good pins to find, but we won't know that till they get started. So I'd second your motion, Mike. And
I'll just add to that motion that I will attempt to find, I think we'll be able to, the original surveyor. I think I have some emails from them and know who it was.
And we may want to check with the township if there's a surveyor that in more recent years or currently they rely on or recommend. It shouldn't, whether it's the same one or not, shouldn't matter. I mean, I like the idea of the same one, but the township may have a preferred one at this point. I just don't know that.
I mean, I think it was within the last 10 years, and we had them do Farmview 2, Stackhouse, Leadham's. I mean, we paid for a handful of surveys at that point in time.
Okay.
I do think then also in Farmview 2, I think a majority of this is easy. The stakes are still there.
Okay.
Everything from Sunnyside Lane side, all those stakes are there, visible.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay.
I know you can see monuments when you walk past the Sunnyside and Dolington corner over there. It's just that backstretch, especially where that one neighbor put up a fence, that I think we certainly need to re-verify that
line.
what we believe is the line there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Who's,
So, go ahead.
whose property is farmland to in terms of our allocation?
Oh, it's the Stewarts. Farmview 2?
No, I know they rented. I'm saying amongst us board members.
Oh,
who-
that's me. That's me.
Oh, okay, I just wasn't sure. I don't,
Yeah.
okay.
And I sent out I was going to cover it later because it wasn't on the agenda, but I sent out a detailed summary of what my findings were, some of which we've just discussed already
Okay,
about Farmview 2.
okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and it's been seconded to get a survey done of the entire parcel of Farmview 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's done. And I'll, of course, will inform the board before we do that of who I found and who might do it.
Right, okay. That was a bit of a tangent in the spring farm tour. But that was the bulk of it. Just
Okay.
another item or two. I know Sean, Tom took you over to the field that he rents and wanted to show you something about where there had been some dumping done, maybe on our land, maybe on a neighbor's land, I don't know. Sean, is there anything you wanted to report back on that part of the tour? Or maybe
Sure.
Sean's not hearing me.
Yeah, I hear you perfectly. Yep,
Okay,
Dennis, I hear
okay.
you. Is there another item you're going to cover too? Because in about 40
Sure.
seconds, I'll be in my house seated and I can
Okay.
concentrate a little better. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to comment
No,
on that.
no,
quickly.
let's move on. The only other item I had from the farm tour was the need for a spring farm tour. I think it's very productive that we all get together with the tenant farmers and have a time to walk the fields and address issues. I believe that that's very important to do. I think we want to be sensitive on how much time we take with them and kind of pick our spots. And I felt like maybe Doug was getting a little antsy. Tim might have been getting a little antsy. The sun is shining. It's a Saturday. They got work to do. So I want to be very respectful of their time. So I would just suggest that we put it on the calendar as we always do. But we make an effort beforehand as a board to really agree, okay, here are the 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever issues we want to address on the tour, and we be focused about that. I don't want to give the impression that we're just using their time. It's even by discussing it, I'm probably exaggerating the issue, but it's there, and I just want to be sensitive to it for next year. So that's what I would say. And then George and I went off and did our own little introductory tour of a couple of the spots and got to know each other better. I thought that was a good time, George. I hope that was useful.
Oh, I thought it was very beneficial. And some of these items that I guess Mike had put on the agenda here for Makefield Brook and Clearview items are things that we actually walked and
Good.
saw.
Yeah.
So let's thank you, Dennis. We got off the agenda a little bit. I want to go back to what we had here. So issues on Makefield Brook, Dennis, for you, upgrade on the no trespassing signs, the cover on the well pipe, and the missing I-295 fence. If you would address those.
Sure. Sean and I put up 3 no trespassing signs on, this is on Dolington Road, where there is a very wide paved pull-off area up next to the woods at the intersection of Dolington Road and I-295. That's the woods that is part of Makefield Brook, because there were clearly teenage partying and other things going on there based on the debris, and occasionally some dumping. So we put up some no trespassing signs. We also notified the Lower Makefield Township Police, who said they wouldn't be surprised by that activity there, and they would keep an eye out and kind of step up patrols when during nice weather. We did uncover or found a vertical well pipe. There's a well back there about 30 yards off of Dolington Road. I've talked to Jim Majewski. They can't find any record of this well anywhere in the township. Nobody has any idea where it came from. It's about a 6-inch pipe that was covered. You could see it had some sort of concrete, probably kind of cover over it that is deteriorated. I covered it with an upside down cooking pot and a cement block on top, so it's covered. I've reached out to Barry Murphy, a plumber that the township has used and I've used, and he has ordered a well cover cap for it and said he would install it when he was going by between jobs. That was about 10 days ago. I haven't heard from him that he has installed it, but I would expect that in the next week or two. There is a missing, about 30 yards of missing fence, I-295 fence along that parcel, where when they expanded the road and built and recarved the bank, they put in a rock erosion runoff. There's missing fence there. Greg Hucklebridge has contacted the contractor that was doing that 295 expansion on our behalf and has followed up with them. We've not heard back from that contractor yet, which I don't think Greg was surprised by. It's just something that we'll have to keep following up on. Now, Greg Hucklebridge is resigned and will be leaving the township soon. I'm not sure the timing, might be as early as June. He has been offered a promotion in another municipality. So I'll be sure to get from him before he leaves. I've asked him this, his contact information, and so that if there's any kind of gap in his position, we can continue that follow up with the I-295 contractor.
Dennis, there was some discussion, I think emails about upgraded signs for no trespassing.
Yeah.
So what's the latest on that?
I'll be interested in anybody else's thought. Sean and I were thinking that when we put up our little kind of homemade versions, we thought, well, let's see if they work or what the reaction is, and kind of contemplate whether they should be upgraded. And that's where I am. I don't have a strong opinion in either direction. Sean, you have any observations after they've been there a month or so?
No, the same. I mean, I drive by there every day. They're still in the ground, which is good news. They're very visible, which is also good news. The bad news is some of the things that caused us to put them up are still going on. There's still dumping going on. So if it's a longer term plan, then yes, we'll want to upgrade them with metal stakes and nice reflective metal no trespassing signs, which we can do. But I think that when you and I put them in, we had said, let's put these in for a couple of months and see where we're at and then go from there. But yeah, after we have a little bit of time, then it will probably be something that we'll want to upgrade in the future. Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion on Makefield Brook? Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for that. The next one is also for you, Dennis. There's the open utility box on Clearview.
Yeah, and that's the same story as the I-295 fence. Greg Hucklebridge on our behalf contacted the company that owns the towers that are there. And that's who's responsible for those utility boxes. Those utility boxes are on township property along that driveway, and they service those towers. And again, he's contacted them and is awaiting a response.
So that is not, you found the issue, but it's not our property.
It's not our property, but it's that driveway that gives access to our property
Yeah,
is township property. And that probably extends another 10 or 15 feet past the driveway into the field. And that's where the utility box is. So it was a hazard to someone driving there or a hazard to someone in the field. So it's kind of our issue, even though it is technically on a little strip of township owned land.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's of concern, definitely of concern to us.
Yeah,
You know,
but there's a wooden pallet thrown over it. So it'd be pretty hard to fall in.
Yes.
And we put some little, bright orange flags around it. So, I don't think Tim won't drive over it by mistake when he's in that field.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So the next item was the summary of the spring tour of farms, but I think you've covered
Yeah, so-
all that.
And I'm sorry for misreading the agenda. I jumped right into that one. My apologies.
That's
And,
okay.
We covered that with the exception of the question I was asking Sean as he was backing into his driveway about his little one-on-one with Doug McGowan on the
With Tom.
dumping.
Tom McGowan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very quickly, Tom took me back to the area kind of back in the southernmost part of Heather Ridge. And as you recall, we did that job back on Throwbridge, maybe a month back, where we partnered with one of our neighbors who we had work done right on the fence line. They also had some work done right on the fence line. While Corcoran was back there doing that work, Tom came out, introduced himself, actually even drove Matt around the field a little bit, but made a couple comments about how he didn't want any ruts or any markings kind of left at that time. The ground was quite wet, but Matt had equipment over on that side. So it was no problem at all. And it seems like maybe there was just a misunderstanding between it was okay if Matt left behind some bigger stuff for now and came back and got it at a different time. So ultimately, Tom wanted to show me where it was that Matt stored some larger logs. And I think at the end of the day, Tom just wanted us and Matt to know that he knew where it was and that it wasn't just going to be buried there. I contacted Matt. He obviously knew exactly where it was. He said, Sean, the farmer didn't want any tracks left in there. And at that time, had I brought a truck in, we'd have left big marks. So we hid them and we'll be back for them. Tom has Matt's number. Matt has Tom's number, and they're going to coordinate getting them out. Tom even offered to go down. He has a piece of equipment that they could put them on and bring them up to the barn where Matt could come and get them basically by using his driveway instead of the farmland. So at the end of the day, I think it was just the fact that there was some stuff left behind. Tom wanted to make sure we knew it was there. He wanted to make sure Matt knew he knew it was there and that it would be taken care of. I've talked to both. Everything's fine. It'll get taken care of in the future. I have no doubt.
And I mean this in a good way. Tom doesn't miss anything.
That is correct.
Yeah,
That is correct.
That's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
We want. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. George, you had something for Sean as well. Was that covered?
So Sean, the only thing I was trying to find out is whether Matt has gone over to Stackhouse to do the buffer work. along the back where you and I had cleared out some of that stuff at 1554 Brookfield. So I don't know where he is with all his buffer clean out on the different parcels. So I was just wondering if he had worked on Stackhouse yet.
So all of the buffer work is complete. Each of the parcels were buffer maintenance was done on each. So I'm certain, and I can drive over there later this week to double check, George. My assumption would be that a rough cut of it was done, and the buffer itself, which we've defined with Corcoran before, is taken care of. But that area down there is probably not taken care of, because as I recall, we had let him know, we had asked him for his plan, how he would like to do it. And then we had basically let him know that we were going to present it to the board, and we kind of needed budget, or we needed the ability to apply one of our summer days to that job. So I don't think he took that as an initiative to get after it yet. We need to dedicate one of our summer days to it, if that's what we want to do, and then come back and dedicate one of our winter days to it. He felt it was probably 2 days worth of work that would ultimately be done down in that area, I believe.
I agree with that, but I had a slightly different interpretation. My interpretation was that while he was on Stackhouse property doing buffer work and he had equipment around, he would tap in, and if he needed to spend a few extra hours at that point, which would go against our summer hours, while he had stuff there, he would actually, and people there, he would just get the work done.
Okay. I will check in with him. Yep. I'll check in with him and see if he did anything there. I know that the buffer work this first time he actually did it himself, so that he familiarized himself with all of the properties. I saw him at a couple different farms and stopped in to chat with him. So I know he did it himself. He didn't have a crew with him, but I'll check in with him on that property and ask him kind of what his plan is for back there.
Okay.
Okay. Good. All right. So the next topic is mine. The Community Day is August 27th. I sent out an invitation to all of our farmers if they'd be interested in displaying there with us paying their entry fee. I heard back from Tim Stewart, who said that Cindy, I guess his aunt, I don't know the relation, but Cindy Stewart wanted to do it as she had done last year and be happy to do it. And then we had also, so that's what Dan had mentioned, he had sent in the check for that. So they'll be going to that one. And we had also talked about Dr. Sternad doing a little display on honeybees. Unfortunately, Sven cannot make that day. He's not around. So we'll have to do something different or do it next year. Or so that's the status. And I did, Dennis, you had some thoughts on that.
I did. Sven, has as an entomologist has a lot of experience in education. I mean, he was a teacher, and he is very willing and able to put together, a bit of a display on bees and on pollinators and that type of thing, which ideally he would then man and answer questions, etc. And he's willing to do, he's not available that date because he's out of town, but he would be willing to spend some time and effort in putting that together if there's someone to man it, that he could kind of coach, counsel, teach, train, to answer questions and to kind of wouldn't be as good as him, but someone to man it. So I would just ask the board that if someone can make the commitment to be there, and quite frankly, I would love to do that. I'm struggling with that date as well. It's the Saturday before Labor Day, and I think I have overnight guests down the shore. I would come back from the shore for that, for Community Day. But I'm trying to smoke out whether these friends are coming on Saturday or Sunday kind of thing. So that's my own issue. But so I can't commit to that. But if we can commit to cover the booth, Sven will spend time to, kind of put something together on honeybees. But we're obviously not going to ask him to do that if no one can be there and kind of make that commitment. So that's one item I think to discuss, and maybe just everyone look at their calendars and give that some thought. I don't know if there's anything to decide here tonight on that. The other thought I had was I forget if some combination of Mike or Sean had come around with a larger printout of our property maps recently. And I thought if we're going to have a table at Community Days along with the stewards, wouldn't it be nice if we had on foam board a nice large map of Lower Makefield with our properties highlighted and the street names and the lots, and people could actually look and see where their house is and where our property is. And I think it would be a good educational tool to have at that event and in future events. So with that, just as a thought, I called Jim Majewski and said, is there a company that the township uses that can make a big map that maybe we could, if we specified what we wanted, we could, have them make it on our behalf and, get an estimate of what that cost. I have no idea what something like that might cost.
So can I jump in? We have one. The last time we had a booth up, I made one.
Okay.
So it was a poster size, 2 feet by 3 feet map of the township. And we colored in all of our properties and we had it on foam board. So
where is that?
At my house, I bought a map and I made it myself. So yeah.
Oh,
But
cool.
the response, I'll jump in here too, but the response that Dan and I were both there and split the time was underwhelming. To say the least. Yeah. And I don't want to say we gave up easily and we didn't want to do it again, but I didn't feel that it was really worth it. I don't think either of us did, right?
No, I think we did it 3 years in a row, and I think it was underwhelming every single time.
Okay. All right. No, I mean if you've already done it, I mean that and we already have one, that's great. Anyway, the punchline when I called Majewski to say, a really detailed map with plot everybody's lot, not names, but property lines and things. He said, Dennis, I can make that for you in-house for free. He goes, tell me what you want, I'll make it for free. He said, we have these big plotters. He said, we can do that.
That's cool.
Do that right here. And I said, oh, okay, well, so I don't know if that would be any different than what you have, but that's what I learned.
It wouldn't hurt because I had planned, and as we did last year, just to prop up our green signs, one of our green signs that I happen to have an extra one of. Okay. Just by Cindy's booth there, so that people see that. Didn't hear any feedback. Of course, I wasn't there, for most of the day, but wouldn't hurt to have that as well. Just to have there.
I mean, if somebody's, did we have someone manning that booth, or was it just the steward?
It was Cindy. I dropped by to see how things were going, but I wasn't there for any significant amount of time.
I see.
I mostly went and ate some corn at the food truck next.
Yes. Okay.
Anyway.
Well, I thought if it was a chance to, talk to neighbors or answer questions, that would help stimulate it. But
Yeah.
Could be a bad idea.
Hmm. I
But
think,
I mean, Dan, I don't know if Majewski is willing to make a very detailed map if we want it, but I don't think we should ask him to do it if
I
we
bet
don't
it's
think we
probably
need it.
based off of the same map. Probably.
Yeah. Okay,
hmm.
okay.
So we'll leave that out there as a question mark for people to think about. How's that?
Agreed.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. Okay. All right, so future meetings, that's our next topic. So just to say that I want to reconfirm with everybody that Zoom is the way we're going to go for now through the summer, at least, and into the early fall, let's say, because we have on the books May, and we have this one, and then we have June 21st is our next one, also scheduled to be Zoom. I have talked to Katie, who has said that some of the boards, although we're not, I don't want to say significant enough, but we're not able to have hybrid Zoom and live meetings, like some of the zoning, et cetera, are. But we could go in person. Now, my sense is that not everybody wants to do this, and I know it's more convenient for some to not have to, get back from work and run in here to the township. So, comments, thoughts on that?
Prefer Zoom through the summer months personally, just because of scheduling conflicts.
Okay. And there usually as for custom, although it's not a rule, we don't have an August meeting. So we'll really do June, July. July isn't set yet. Then we'll skip August and restart in September. I've asked Katie so that we get regulated, which we're not during the pandemic, to the fourth Tuesday of each month, 7:30. And she said, yes, I haven't seen that, in concrete yet, but that seems to be what we'll get. How does that sound?
Okay.
So I would pencil in fourth
Okay.
Tuesday of the coming months, except August, and then we can, we'll go by Zoom. Any other thoughts? Everybody's shaking their head. Seems
Yeah,
like
I think Zoom is just so convenient. I mean, I'd love to do it in person, but it would be we'd always be missing someone. I'm afraid, with schedules and locations and everything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's really useful if we can count on the fourth Tuesday of every month kind of thing. That helps everyone plan. It's not a random walk. So yeah, I like that idea.
Okay, so I'll take an action to reconfirm and I'll call it bug, Katie, that we maintain that fourth Tuesday. I think she knows, but I'll just check. Okay. So other business. So the first business, I have several items that I'd like to do. First is that Dennis has agreed to relinquish his role as secretary. And I know you're very sad about that. Don't cry. I'd like to thank Dennis for his work over this past year plus, must have been at least maybe 2 years of doing that role. And George Hines has graciously agreed to take that over. So I would like we need to do this formally with the nomination, and I'd like to therefore nominate George to be our secretary. I would ask for a second.
I will second.
Okay. All in favor except George?
Aye.
Okay, George will be our new secretary. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, George.
You owe me a beer on LBI.
You're near each other. That's right.
I owe you a bourbon.
Okay, so I didn't get this to the agenda because I was just got a chance to get out there to the two properties that I oversee, Longshore and Farmview 2 yesterday. So let me just highlight what I found. On Longshore, first of all, there are two properties near the corner of Pownell and Dolington where the residents have let vines grow from their side. I think Dennis, you had identified them as sort of wild grapevines at one point. By photo, you thought that's what they looked like.
Okay.
But anyway, there's if you look at the photos I sent around, they're pretty distinct, and they're growing on their side. So I think we ought to send them letters that those vines should be removed before they damage the fence and start growing on our side. Sort of a warning / reminder letter. And the other thing I found was there was unevenness in the height of the grass that's mowed in the buffer area. And in looking things over, it seemed to be in an area where someone had cut our fence. And we've had this before in the past. We've had to get our fence company to redo the fence there, but people, cut it again. So someone needs to be seems to be getting out there with their mower and cutting the grass to a lower level than the rest. And Sean, you confirmed this with Matt that that's probably what's happening.
Yes, correct. He stated that there are a couple of neighbors that are back there cutting, hence the reason you see it lower being cut with a mower and higher being cut with a hydro axe.
Ah, okay.
And just a question, those areas that the neighbors are cutting, Matt is mowing those or could mow those, right? I mean, it's not like it's an area that he can't get to. They're just choosing to make it look more like a lawn than a field.
Correct.
That's correct. Now,
Okay.
the term mowing, just real careful. So these people are mowing with lawn mowers. Yes, they're trying to make it look like an extension of their lawn.
Right.
He's cutting as of right now with a larger hydro axe. His hope is that by him maintaining the buffers over and over, he'll be getting rid of the debris that's in there, smoothing them out, raising the trees, and he'll ultimately be cutting them with a mower himself. So people will be very happy with the cut that he'll be able to do once he gets these buffers down to. Right now, he said, Sean, I'd ruin a mower if I put one across here, but
Yeah.
I'm going to get him to the point where I'm mowing them. Now, this happens right here on Leadham's as well. For years, it grew up very high. Things were coming over. A few neighbors go on the other side. They cut it down. It looks, Dan one time told me it looked like I think an apple grove or something. He told me, and it's right. I mean, it's low. It's well maintained. It looks nice. I'm thinking that the more these buffers are being cut and maintained, the less people are going to be back there wanting to do that. But that's what's going on right now. They're maintaining buffers that were not maintained to their liking.
So what I thought we could recommend doing about this is really, I thought of two options. See what you think. First is to send everybody along that line or on Merrick Road and even on Pownell, even though I don't see them doing the same thing, but along Pownell, to not get out on our property and trespass and mow the buffer themselves. And they should not be cutting the fence. Or we could identify where the fence is cut and just send a letter to that person and say, shouldn't be cutting our fence, you're trespassing, shouldn't be getting out mowing the lawn either, which is apparently being done. So thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm not familiar with I haven't seen the properties like you gentlemen have, but I think it'd be more effective to be more targeted and specific than kind of a general letter, which, anyone can choose to kind of ignore or not. But if it's written to you, it's kind of harder to ignore.
Well, I
that
was
would be my thought.
Okay, well, just to clarify, I was going to put the names of the residents and their addresses
No,
to,
no, I know, but I mean,
yeah,
if there's a couple people that are violating it, I wouldn't want to accuse a dozen people of doing what two people are doing.
okay.
Would be the way, that would just be my thought, but I'm open.
How many homes do you think we're talking about?
We're talking about, I would say three
Are
roughly.
all three, I view the potential of cutting the grass maybe separate as cutting the fence for access.
Uh-huh.
So do you think all three of those are they're all, cutting the fence for
No,
access?
I only see one area where the one resident has the fence cut. But I see that same grass-like look and the same height across, I would say, 2 or 3 properties.
I
And
think,
then, go ahead.
yeah, my gut reaction is you leave the lawn cutting thing alone and you send a letter to whoever may have the property where the fence is cut. And I know in the past we have put like locks on, either gates or somebody's put in a gate and something like that. I don't know. But I think by way of that picture, that's not really a possibility, right?
No,
Yeah, this is like truly destroyed property, I think, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My thought would be you leave the grass cutting thing alone. Send a letter to the property that cut the fence, and say you can't do this, and we're going to have to repair this, and don't do it again.
I think we also add in the line like we talked about, Mike, before about, if we as a board determine that the integrity of that fence line has been broken and we decide to have the fence replaced, it's at your cost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you're going to do this, I will give you an additional couple of addresses that should receive the same letter. Fence cut, pinched back together with bungee cords, and is opened for cutting. There's 3 of them on Leadham's, the same thing done. But if we're separating the cutting from the cutting of the grass from the cutting of the fence, I do think we put something in there that, if we deem that the fence needs to be replaced, because ultimately what you're doing is you're creating a soft point in the fence. So, the motorcycle that we've had out here driving around in the field can't figure out where it's coming from. But if it's not coming off of Dolington, it's not impossible that it's coming through places like where there's cut fences. There's a complete voided fence on the farm that somebody took down and rolled up. So, I think we have a bigger kind of fence thing that we need to deal with. But if we're going to send that letter, I think we do put something in there that if we deem that it needs to be replaced, it's at your expense, and the bill will be sent to the homeowner.
I'd like those addresses, Sean. I think you might have texted me, but if you wouldn't mind reminding me in an email.
Yep, I'll get them to you.
That'd be good.
I agree with what Sean said. I think that ought to be part of the message. And I don't know if to soften that message a bit, if you want to go down the path at all of saying, we have a new approach to maintaining the buffers.
Yes,
We know people have been
Yeah,
disappointed in buffer maintenance, which has incentive, may have provided an incentive for you to try to cut it yourself. We are now cutting it more effectively, and as our maintenance and as we clean up the buffers more and more, the grass will become lower and lower. Kind of just tell that real short story to say, look, hopefully you don't have any incentive to go over there and cut the grass.
yeah, I like that, Sean and Dennis. I like that idea because we really don't know, as Dan asked about, how many houses are involved? So I know there's a hole in the fence, but I don't know whether that person is getting out there or their agent is getting out there and cutting, for the neighbor here and the neighbor there. And so that gets a little sticky if you go with the grass cutting as the main target of your letter.
Right.
It simplifies things and it's
Okay.
pretty clear what we think, what we're gonna do. Okay, well, I'll draft something up. Any question, any thoughts, further thoughts on that? I'll draft something up and send it out. And again, I was gonna send out letters to the two homeowners on Pownell about their vines growing. So I'll draft
Yeah.
something up about that. And vines. Okay, so over on Farmview 2, we've discussed most of this. But there is one thing that we hadn't discussed, and that's about the bamboo growing behind. It's actually behind, looks like number 7 and 9 Sunnyside Lane. We've dealt with Mrs. Reinke before, and Mike Kirk has gone out in the past and warned her, and there's been back and forth, and she did remediate at the time. Apparently, it wasn't a good enough job because that whatever buffer she put up at the time to keep that 10 feet distance between the bamboo and our fence isn't holding. The bamboo is growing close and actually has started to shoot up on our side of the fence. I saw 3 or 4 shoots, good size, 4-foot shoots, fresh shoots coming up with bamboo. So Mike, you may have noticed I emailed Mike, I copied everyone, and he's going to go out and review what he's done in the past and take a new fresh look at this. So that's underway. The other thing we talked about, Susan Circle. So I had thought to send a letter to, it's 1696 Susan Circle, the people that have the pine trees, on which appears to be on our side, but it seems that we need to wait for the survey before we send out any letters, because we don't really know that they're on our property.
Yeah.
And then the new fence that we had identified for the other side along Susan Circle, we also need to do, there's no new fence behind, there's no fence behind 1-5 and 7 Sunnyside Lane and 1536 Dolington. So that's what I'll talk to the surveyor about when we find that surveyor. So that's it there. Any other new business?
Just a question on the potential fence at Farmview 2. Because that's going to be quite a run, even without the survey, we one can calculate its length. Are we going to get multiple bids on that fence? It seems like in an earlier recent meeting, there was some comment about our current fence company and whether they were really everything that we needed. So it's an open question.
No, I definitely think we should. I'll need your help in finding, when I looked at this, but it's been years now. I was only able to identify, and I did an extensive survey of Bucks County fencing companies. I was able to only find one company, and that's why we're dealing with Apex, that dealt with the type of fence that we've put up on most of our farms, except for Longshore, where we put up chain link. But that what I'll call cattle fencing, it's been variously described as, what was it, Dan? Type 2, PennDOT
Type 2 fencing.
There you go, PennDOT Type 2 fencing. They're the only ones I could find that had that, and it's willing to work with us. So if I can get some help, I'll be happy to. I think we should get more than one bid.
Okay.
The reason why we've used that specific fencing is because the ordinance actually requires for that specific fencing.
Okay.
Right.
And what's the word you're saying before type 2?
PennDOT, like
PennDOT?
Pennsylvania Department of
PennDOT.
Transportation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, PennDOT.
Okay.
But even though, and Dennis asked this question because he wasn't familiar, when I took a picture of Longshore fencing, it's clearly chain link. For some reason, even though the ordinance called for that, Dan, there was an agreement at some point by this board years ago to allow that development or get that developed to have chain link.
And this doesn't mean that we can't also go down that path of just to review the ordinance again. And we have some emails that reference the design and the ordinance and the references to it. But yeah, doesn't mean that we can't go down that path of what is a better alternative, and let's, you know, go through the proper channels to change it and put it in the other.
And Dan, do I presume that PennDOT type 2 fence is the minimum, or it is the thing to be used? I mean, it's that or better, or?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So, where are we with that? So the, Dennis, I noticed you're writing. You're going to help out with finding maybe some other fence companies?
I'll do some homework to see if I can come up with an alternative as well. An alternative fence supplier, installer.
How about, I know we're all homeowners, right? So any fence companies that you've dealt with, Sean, George?
Nope. If I can do without a fence, I'm happy without a fence.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, you and I did the fence back here, Mike. Apex did it.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
but it's
kind of how I met you.
No other companies though.
No, but I'm interested in putting some feelers out and seeing who other people use. Now, finding a fence company is one thing. Finding a fence company that then is in touch with this exact, specific fencing, that'll be the project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we need to go to Tractor Supply and Agway kind of places. It's not suburban fence company.
Right.
It's somebody with sheep and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Dennis, it's called the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Type 2 right-of-way fence.
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania type. Okay.
Right over
Mouthful.
Right of way. Thank you.
Okay. Other business. Anybody else? I have one more item if there's no other. My item is a big and hearty thank you to all of you for being engaged, terrific board members. Thank you. I think we're very complimentary in that we bring various skills and backgrounds to this board that makes it work. And it's all due to you. So a big thank you. Don't get to say that often, but I appreciate each and every one of your contributions.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for all you do.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for your leadership.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for your leadership. Absolutely.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so we're up to, so I want to stop here and ask if there's any public comment on anything up to this point.
There's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to review of, hearing none, we'll go to review of action items. I guess that's still you, Dennis.
I guess it is for this meeting. I don't know. But here's what I have, and I usually miss some. So the first one is the discussion of the buffer cleanup at Stackhouse. Was there a follow-up to that, or are we checking them off?
Sean.
Dennis, I've already followed up. I sent George a communication back and forth with Matt that I just had in the last 20 minutes. It was too wet for him to get his machines back there during the buffer cleanup. It's on his radar. He will go back there, spend a half a day and get it done.
Okay.
Great.
No,
Thank you.
I don't think we should include it as an action item here.
Okay.
The issue of at 4191 Heacock Road, the right-of-way passage for the sewer and water line. Dan is waiting for the township to give its input. So just an action item for Dan to follow up with the township at some point, if that's not forthcoming. A survey at Farmview 2. Mike, I think you were going to reach out to the surveyor there and maybe check with the township as their surveyor. But anyway, to identify a surveyor to conduct a survey of Farmview 2.
I'll do both. Yes.
Okay. I have one with the missing fence along I-95 and the utility box where Greg Hucklebridge is following up with 2 different contractors. I'll continue to follow up with Greg on those 2 items and try to get his information so that there's no gap with when he departs. There was an action item for everyone to think about community days. If someone can make a commitment to that day, we could ask our beekeeper maybe to put together a program. Longshore, there's 2 letters going to neighbors with vines growing, and letters going to, I think, 3 neighbors about fence cutting, which we just discussed. The bamboo on Sunnyside Lane at number 7 and number 9. Mike's following up on that. And the fence company, Mike and I will both look for fence companies and get an estimate. I guess, Mike, we might as well ask, you might as well ask Apex for an estimate, right? Or
Yes.
and then and if we can find a second estimate, we'll get it. So
Okay.
if you ask for the estimate, I'll look for other fence companies. That's what I have on my tickler list.
I had one other item, Dennis. Mike is supposed to follow up with Katie about confirming the 4th Tuesday of every month at 7:30 p.m. our meetings on Zoom.
Okay, good.
Yeah. You're already fulfilling the secretarial role very well, George, because I had that as an item that was missed.
A great appointment. Great appointment.
Okay. Okay.
It's time to earn my keep.
There you go. There you go. So if there's nothing else, we can, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, great seeing everyone again, and have a great rest of the